So I'm just going to throw this open and just talk about, Creepshow and how you got involved with it. And
What do you want to know?
I want to know, when did you first hear about it? I'll start with you, Tom. When did you first heard about this?
I don't remember that.
You don't?
Probably a call from George,
Yeah.
George likes to send telegrams. Before Dawn of the Dead, the telegram said, start thinking of ways to kill people, you know. But I just don't remember about Creepshow. Because we had months of prep time before the crew even showed up to build the sets and stuff. Mm-hmm. So we were building Fluffy and Nate's corpse for John Amplis. John came in for a head cast to do that. So
yeah, I was cast only because I got a call from you.
Really?
Yeah, you called me and said I need somebody. Yeah.
To play Nate's corpse?
Yeah.
So I'm responsible for
you are responsible for
I don't remember that.
For you being
cool.
For me being in it, yeah.
Oh my God.
Why? You must have been thin.
Thin than those days, yes.
And you're an actor.
in the past.
Yes. Because we cast your head.
Yes, you did.
A little bit younger.
A little, yeah, but it wasn't necessary. But yeah, it was because I was slender.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I regret about your particular makeup was I asked the costume people to make your suit 2 or 3 sizes bigger, so you would look, because you're a skeleton.
Well, I think
the suit was skin tight. It should have
still
been
sold.
baggy.
It's sold.
Yeah.
I really think it's sold. I don't think anybody's ever questioned it. Yeah, you probably.
Well, except for the scene where the maggots, we had to put maggots on you.
Well.
Because he wouldn't do it.
Okay, I did.
That's right, you didn't.
I know. I've told this secret on myself.
One of the girls on the crew put the suit on.
Girls are braver than men.
It was Debbie Pintus.
Debbie Pintus, yes.
From California.
Women are much stronger.
But I remember I have a video
ever could
when the
be.
maggots were on her.
Yeah.
I have a video that she's screaming, "It's going in my eye." There was a maggot, and you can see it in the film.
See, there's a reason I didn't want to do it.
You didn't want any maggots to crawl
in
into
my
your
eyes, or mouth, or nose,
Or any orifice.
There were mealworms.
I met George in L.A.
There you go.
I knew him from my prior life, and he had sent me the script, and he said, "Is there any part in there you want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, I would like to play Jordy, the swamp guy gets eaten by the grass and stuff." And he said, "Well, Stephen King wrote it, and he's going to play that." So and then I realized he wasn't really asking me, is there any part that I want to do that he's going to give me. He said, "Would you mind playing the father in the wraparound, the beginning and the end of the film, to tie them all together?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And I asked him, "Are you going to really shoot it like a comic book?" And he said, "Yeah." And I loved the way that movie looked when it was all finished. It looked
There's a mood.
It
There's a
looked
mood in
like
that
a
movie.
comic book.
Well,
It was great.
that's a
And
great
look,
segue for me because I got a call from Nikki Mastandria, who was the key grip on Creepshow.
Yeah.
And I had done a lot of theatrical lighting at the Pittsburgh Playhouse and different theaters. And in Creepshow, it was before digital, all the light changes that happen, all the color changes that happen before anything dramatic happens in the film. There's one before Tom and whatever. I did most of the color changes, maybe about 95% of those. So
those were done with scrims behind.
yeah, they were done with a screen behind it, a scrim behind the. It was probably just a silk, and then we would light the silk from behind with the patterns on a gobo. A gobo would be in the light, and then it would give the pattern. And then with Tom and I both there, George cast us as the garbage men. That's how we got cast as a trash.
And when you watch the movie, we're kind of in the distance, coming closer to the camera, but
Yeah.
watch the choreography in the distance, because we have a whole bit worked out. We're kicking can lids and throwing bags over our shoulders. I mean, the whole choreography.
Well, we decided, what would trash men do? And
These trash guys.
they're loud. At
Yeah.
6 o'clock in the morning, they're making as much noise as they can.
That's what we did.
So we did. We were slamming down garbage cans. We were smacking the garbage truck, and we created this whole sort of improv and right before we actually got to the lines. And
When you were doing the lights, when you were doing the scrim behind Leslie Nielsen,
Yeah.
when he was laughing hysterically,
Yeah.
was he doing the fart machine to make
Oh,
himself laugh?
yeah.
he could laugh on cue, but he
'Cause I
would do
know
that
in
to make us
Platoon-
to laugh.
I know in Naked Gun, when he and Priscilla Presley were coming out of the movie theater,
Yeah.
and they had just seen Platoon, and they're laughing hysterically, I know he was doing that.
Oh, sure.
That fart
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
Didn't
was
you go?
good at
You went
that.
to? Didn't you go to dinner with him?
Yeah, Chris, George's wife, Chris Romero, took me. She needed. George was busy. He's doing film, and she said, "Would you go to dinner with me and Leslie Nielsen at somewhere on 22 out there?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I was her date, and I went, and he had a girlfriend or somebody with him. I don't know what, but partway into the dinner, the appetizer didn't even arrive, and you hear this. And I said, "Oh my God! How terrible was it? I know it wasn't me." And then you wait for the smell, but there is none. And then and finally he held it up and showed.
It was.
Was that the case when the people at the next table?
Oh no! They were.
it was-
Everybody was
Because
freaked
I
out
heard
about
people walk up to him as they were leaving and said, "You are disgusting."
Well, I think we were very fortunate to have such a great cast of actors. Creepshow is just filled with wonderful actors, including the four of us, and mostly us. No,
We were
but-
garbage men. We were.
I'll teach you to throw away my comic books.
Stephen King's actual son.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thinking
yes,
like
yes.
that.
Yeah. Now
get
does
you,
now
Dad.
is Joe Hill the author? Now does Joe Hill,
I know.
popular author, successful author.
Yes.
What was
Stephen
his-
King was so worried about that scene where I had to slap his kid.
No.
And he's standing right there hovering around all the time we're talking about it, rehearsing it.
But it was off
You're not
camera.
going to hurt him. You're not going to hurt him, are you? You're not going to hurt him. And I said, "Stephen, I'm an actor. I've been doing this for years.
I'm a
I know
method
how-
actor."
I am going to hit him." "You are?" I said, "Yeah, but it'll just be fingertips, and they'll make the sound
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it'll look good, but it won't hurt him.
No.
Don't worry."
He does have a red mark on his face.
We put the
Yeah,
red
that was
mark
about to say.
on his
He
face.
did.
Because he loved us.
Oh, yeah.
He was always hanging out with us,
Yeah,
the effects
yeah.
lab with all the monsters and things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, one night we were, the crew was, when we were shooting the Something to Tide You Over sequence in New Jersey, the crew was hanging out in one of the rooms, and one of the other grips, a guy named Michael Listorti, whose nickname was Dondi, we all had nicknames. We used to do this bit, he looked like Charlie Manson, and we would do this bit where I would play Tom Schneider, the interviewer,
Right.
and then he would do Charlie Manson. And so Steven comes in and he's having beers with us, and somebody says, "Hey, Moon Baby and Dondi, do Charlie Manson and Tom Schneider." So we start doing Charlie Manson and Tom Schneider, and people are laughing, and Stephen King gets up and runs out of the room. So the next morning at breakfast, I said, "Hey, George, I think we freaked out Stephen King last night because we were doing," and he said, "Moon, how could you freak out Stephen King?" And I said, I told him what happened. He said, "No." He said, "When he gets inspired, when he gets an idea, he goes right away. He does not hesitate. He goes right away.
write
and he writes
something down.
Right.
Yeah.
So a few
Yeah.
months later, actually it was about a year later, Stephen was writing Christine, which is named after George's wife, Chris Romero. So Christine is named after Christine Romero. And he was writing that during Creepshow. And so I got the book, and because I used to read all of Stephen King's stuff, and on like page 15, there's a hitchhiker that looks like Charlie Manson. And I said, we influenced this page. This is my page. I want a royalty. I want 7 cents every time this book sells. Yeah.
You know, there was a time, George had a dinner party one time during or right after. It had to be during, because it was a memorable evening for me. George was there, and Chris was there, Adrienne was there, and John Carpenter
Her
was
husband.
there because
Her husband.
he and Adrienne were married, and he
I
was
think
in
I
town
was there at
visiting.
his apartment.
And at his apartment
Yeah.
over in
I was at a dinner with Adrian and John Carpenter. I wonder.
Yeah, and Stephen was there, and I was there, and
Wow.
I thought, oh my God! And I thought if anything happened, this would really deeply
Like if there was an earthquake
wound
or-
the
yeah.
whole genre.
Like if a meteor hit that
yeah,
house,
honest to
the
God.
horror genre would be
sniper,
wiped out.
yeah.
It would be,
It'd be like the Titanic.
yeah,
Well, that must have
Of
been
horror
another
genre.
party because Stephen wasn't there when I did it.
yeah, yeah. I thought, oh my God, what a
Yeah, the whole hub of the movie is right there.
yeah.
John, I wanted to ask you about when you filmed Father's Day, being out on that property, the house out there, that big estate.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah, was it Fox Chapel or
Fox Chapel,
Yeah,
as I
yeah.
recall.
The Abbott
right?
House. The Abbott House.
The Abbott House.
He was
is that
a
what it
wig,
was?
Oh,
a
yeah.
wig importer.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just absolutely gorgeous.
In fact,
Yeah, it was
when
wonderful.
you were coming out of the grave, what was down there with you? I think there was a fog machine, lights,
Fan.
a fan to blow the fog.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you were under tar paper. You just tore
Correct.
through the
That's
tar
right.
paper to come out. Yeah.
To come up and out.
And while we
Yeah.
were shooting the Abbott House,
Days
Mr.
before CGI.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This was
It
all-
was all
This was
practical.
All
live. This
kind
was
of
all
handmade
practical.
practicals.
But while we were shooting, the guy who owned the place, Mr.
Yeah.
Abbott, his German Shepherd died, and they buried him in that hole.
In your grave.
They buried him in your grave.
I'm glad we were able to do that.
It's a practical. practical enough.
Provide
I
him,
did-
provide him an eternal home.
But what were you going to ask?
But
me?
I was, what I remember about that hole mostly was coming up through it, but then working with like the likes of Vivica Linfors,
Oh, sure.
who was a delightful, wonderful woman, tremendous actor. Working with Carrie Nye and ripping her head
Oh,
off.
yeah.
I loved her. Who
Ed Harris.
just
That's right, you
chain
did a-
smoked. She
Turner.
chain smoked and swore like a sailor.
Yeah.
And loved every second of her. And Ed Harris, I got to kill, which is wasn't a bad deal. So
Well, that was sort of almost a Knight Riders cast. I mean, half the
yeah, it
cast
was
Knight
really.
Riders.
That's true.
Between
Warner
you
Shook.
and
Yeah,
Warner and
right.
you.
Ed Harris, right?
Harris.
Yeah.
Well, when I heard Vivica Linford was
Oh,
coming,
I loved her.
because I knew her when she was a Swedish beauty queen in Don Juan with Errol Flynn. When she walked into the room, because George brought her around, I took her face in my hands, and I looked at her and I said, "You're the queen from Don Juan, Errol Flynn," and I kissed her on the cheeks, and it was like an animal on the side of the road that took the thorn out of their paw. She was mine forever, and they were best friends. Because I just loved her. In that
But she was game too. I mean, she was really game to roll around on the ground and you know.
Well, the whole cast seemed to really get into the spirit of the thing. When you watch all the different performances,
George Romero.
everybody
George
got it.
Romero.
That was George.
Yeah.
And
it's
wanted to do
always
it for
George.
George
Yeah.
Romero.
Anytime you worked for George, it was like that. I mean, Dawn of the Dead was like that. Knight Riders was like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure Martin was like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
George would have rolled on the
Well,
floor.
even the later films
to
I
show
got
her.
to work with on George, it was just, even if the conditions were terrible and oppressive and miserable, no
La-
one was
Land
going to
of the
complain.
Dead, it was
oh
freezing
God, yeah.
up
I mean,
there.
Survival of the Dead. We had snow, sleet, rain, and freezing it over all in the same night, and mud up to our heels, and no one complained because
Right.
George Romero's over there. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
It's just so weird. I still can't get used to thinking of him in the past tense.
I know.
It's
I
been-
don't think of him as that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't.
Obviously,
I
you
don't think
yeah.
of him in the past tense.
No.
I saw him at a convention once. The crowd was to Cincinnati. The doors hadn't opened. He was backstage. He was looked kind of down. I walked over and I said, "Hey, George, how you doing?" He said, "Kill me now." He was sick as a dog. But when the doors opened,
Boom.
Never
yeah.
knew.
I saw that a
for
couple
every
times,
single
yeah,
person
yeah.
that came in.
Yeah.
And you know, Creepshow was really the first time he had worked with, because Night Riders that we did the year before, Ed Harris wasn't a big star.
Oh, he
yet.
was unknown, yeah.
unknown.
He was
But-
pretty brand new.
Yeah, he was. But Creepshow was the first time George worked with a cast full of stars.
Yeah.
You know, when you work with
Yeah.
E.G. Marshall and you work with
Fritz
you know,
Weaver.
Fritz
Hal
Weaver and
Holbrook.
Hal
Yeah,
Holbrook
yeah.
and Leslie
Yeah,
Nielsen.
yeah.
You work with those guys. And everybody was all those pros. It was great to watch them be as comfortable with George as well, and him as comfortable with them. I mean, you know, it was just George. He had that way of making actors feel at ease when you worked with
And
him.
I never figured out how he managed to be an authoritative presence on the set without lording it. He was not a dictator. He was
No,
not someone
never.
Oh my
barking
God,
orders.
no. He,
If anything, he was the opposite. As actors, I think we all can say that I don't think I ever worked with a director that gave me more freedom than George. You know, pretty much just do the scene, and if he didn't direct you, you knew you were doing it right.
He let you improvise.
He let you improvise.
As an actor and as a special effects guy.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine on Martin that would have had to have been the case with what you were doing.
It was, yeah, I mean, he was, the word that always comes up first for me when I think about George is how he creates a family and has created a family. You know, he's still, if he were here, he would still be in contact with all the same old folks
Oh, yeah.
that he started back with with Latent Image.
Yeah.
You know, he would, he's just, there's a charisma there that is really full of kindness and
big gentle teddy bear.
that's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Bear.
And funny.
Bear of a guy.
So funny.
And funny.
I mean, he would
And
call
funny.
me and just, you know, we would do dueling Brandos, or I would call him.
Oh, his Brando, he loved.
He and I would go, oh, so how you doing, Mr. Brando? And, you know, we would do this whole Brando thing. And then we'd hang up. I mean, we would
Yeah,
just,
it was like
we would
we
do
would do
Brando for 5 minutes and that would be it. You know,
But
I mean,
that's
that
the
was
thing
George.
about what every one of those sets, every one of these sets that I've ever been on, certainly, are the same people that I worked with when I first worked with George. You know, they're all the same people, and they're not employees. They're family. You know,
It seemed to me
And
that a
that's-
lot of the sets pieces actually ended up in his
yeah.
apartment, and then later in his
Hal
house.
Holbrook's house is in my bedroom.
Yeah.
All the bookcases are up there.
Everything is in
But
your house.
the problem with that is that all that furniture was stored up on a balcony in the high school gym. Do you remember?
Oh,
And
yeah,
all
yeah.
the cockroaches that escaped went into that
That's
furniture.
where they went.
Because we gave most of it to the Salvation Army, and they got horrible phone calls from people.
Oh, is that
Oh,
right?
That these
Oh my gosh.
big
Yeah, not the
Trinidad.
little, not these little guys.
I'd always heard that none of them escaped.
Oh, thousands.
Oh, no.
Thousands.
As a matter of fact, the current owners of that used to be Penn Hall Academy, where we shot Creepshow.
Oh, God,
was a high
yeah.
school that they kind of your parents threatened
Yeah.
you if you were misbehaving. I'm going to send you to Penn Hall Academy, you know. And when it closed, we turned their gymnasium was our sound stage.
That's where the
And
sets were built.
That's where we built all the sets
where
was
we
in their
shot.
gym. And then the classrooms were edit suites or production offices or
Up
whatever.
on the hill. Up on
Yeah.
the hill.
Up on the hill. And the new company, the company that owns it, I won't mention names, still has a cockroach problem because of Creepshow. And
But
that was
this is a new breed of cockroach because they came from Trinidad.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
these
They were
huge mothers. They-
mongols. They
yeah.
were-
we used to call them palmetto bugs when they were in Florida when I was a
No,
kid.
these were huge.
But they were giant. They were
George,
really-
I always remember the name. I think it was Gigantus blabranter or something
Something
like that.
like that.
Really, I mean, just as big as
So
your
George
palm.
is famous for infesting Pennsylvania. Palmetto bugs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Formerly native to Florida.
And I think another sort of credit to George as far as the family thing goes. We've all acted for a long time in this room.
Yeah.
And we're not close with any other cast members that we've worked with.
Right.
But the Romero film casts, Tom, George, you know, John
Yeah.
and Tom
You
and
just-
Tom and I, we're all, you know, we see each other. It's like a family reunion.
Right.
We get
Yeah.
together on holidays, like 4th of July, we get together.
We
get
did
together at
England together
conventions.
Yeah, we
I go to Tom's house. He comes. You know, we go out to lunch together. I mean, that speaks a lot to George because he wanted it to be that way, and that's exactly the way it turned out. You know, making a movie with George was like a bunch of kids in a treehouse playing, and he was just
Yeah.
one of the kids. He was like the big kid in the playhouse and in the treehouse, and that's really what it was like. He was that fun. It was really
My
that much
birthday was during Creepshow, and they brought me out of the little studio we were in, the whole cast and crew, and there's the cake, and they sang Happy Birthday. And it ended sort of weird, you know, and we all kind of went away, went back in there. They knocked on the door like a half an hour later to do it again. Sing Happy Birthday, the cake, because the explosive didn't go off the first time. And it didn't go off the second time. So they told me, fuck! The cake is set to explode. And George is there waiting, you know, for it to blow up.
It was probably his idea.
No, it was probably him and Daryl
Daryl
Ferrucci.
Ferrucci,
Yeah.
It makes for a great story, though. The fact that it didn't work, that's awesome. It's bittersweet that, you know, he's no longer here, but he got to see just how many people loved his movies.
Yeah.
Whenever you would see that, I mean, I remember sitting with him at a convention in Chiller. We're outside in the tent. It's October. It's freezing outside. People are standing out in the cold, dying of frostbite out there.
Yeah.
And George signed, I think, as I remember, it was 7 to 8 hours straight without taking a break.
Right.
And the whole time I'm like, George, you want to stop? He's like, nah.
No, he didn't go eat. He didn't go to lunch.
Never did anything. And the whole time I'm just like, I don't know how you're doing this, but he made every single person that came up at that table feel like you're my attention
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
That's a really hard thing
He
to
was
do. Not a
great
lot of
at
people
that.
can do that. And he was just
so good.
everyone walked away from that table like, I got to meet and talk to George Romero, and
Yeah.
it didn't feel phony or fake or anything like that. You know, unlike Tom Savini, it's not the easiest thing in the
Oh,
world.
yeah, well,
Of course.
What? Did I miss something? What? He looking
called
right
you-
at the camera?
He called you a jagoff.
No, I was a jagoff
Yeah,
to him.
He was
When he first met me.
but he didn't
I've
use
changed
the
my
word.
ways, though.
Oh, you
Because
have?
he's not from Pittsburgh.
He's not from Pittsburgh.
No, I'm not from Pittsburgh.
That's why he would
Jagoff.
not use.
It's
That's
only-
why.
Yeah,
That's why
that's
every
that
time Michael
Pittsburgh
Keaton
thing.
is in a movie, so is the word
I
jagoff.
know.
Mike, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So, which story in Creepshow is your favorite story?
You know, I go back and forth because every time I watch the movie, I mean, that was the first horror movie I ever saw was Creepshow. The one I always respond to the most, just because I just think it's so well told from the beginning to the end, and there's a lot of twists and turns, is The Crate. I think The Crate, just the performances in it, and Fluffy scared the shit out of me when I first, because and what was genius about it is you never really get that long a look at it.
You know what? George apologized to me when the movie they were editing. He says, Tom, and Paul Hirsch edited
Yeah,
The Crate.
that are
Paul
Star
Hirsch,
Wars,
Star
yeah,
Wars,
yeah.
edited Star Wars. He said Paul Hirsch edited this, and you know Fluffy's hardly in it. That's great.
Yeah.
That's what's going to make him scary.
And it does, because
If you-
when that
if you
crate
go see
flies
the
open,
movie-
you just
Oh,
see
yeah.
a quick shot. That's it.
And
That's-
the
that was a
sound design on that was great.
yeah.
too.
That was the secret of Alien. You never saw that creature, but
No.
it scared the. If you see the monster, you go, okay, that's it. I can deal with it.
Yeah.
And you're not afraid anymore.
You see just enough of Fluffy
Yeah.
to understand what it is.
That he's powerful. It can take you out.
And it has a shitload of teeth.
Sharp
and it's
teeth,
gonna-
sharp teeth.
It's
Oh,
gonna really hurt.
Many.
But Fritz Weaver,
he's
when he was
Freaking out.
Freaking
the whole,
out.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
how do you do that?
Good.
Oh, God.
How do you do that?
You know,
And he's doing the laugh.
and Adrienne Barbeau is just eating that role alive in that.
And that's great because she's not
the
that
complete
kind of
opposite
person.
of
Yeah.
Billy. I mean, she could
Yeah.
not be less like that
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
I mean, George just had a way of just getting people to have fun, to understand the tone of the material that he was going for. And in Creepshow is never a better example. You have all these Hollywood actors, you have independent people from Pittsburgh, and they all got the wavelength. They understood exactly what they were supposed to be doing. And that's not easy. That's not easy at all for something that's as pitched as Creepshow is. And everybody got it. Every single one. Except the garbage men. They weren't good.
Chew your food before you swallow!
They were not. They were off.
They were
I mean, they
excellent.
off.
They were the
We
best.
weren't good,
They
we
were the
were
best
great.
thing. In the,
That's right.
What a great way to end that movie. With two great performances.
As a matter of fact,
There are no small parts, only small
Small
actors.
actors.
Garbage men, small parts, but great actors.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful actors.
I want to see him.
thought
I
he
wanna-
was
Comedians.
swell.
I always thought there should have been a spin-off.
Of the garbage.
Just
men.
of the
Yeah.
garbage
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we
That's a
did
good
find the
idea.
comic book. It could be in our hands flipping pages to the next
No,
episode.
but you're garbage man number one, though.
I am number
You're
one.
number
What?
one. Yes.
I
that's
am
right.
number one. You're number
Oh,
Oh,
is
boy,
he
here we go.
listed in the script that way?
I am number
I was
one.
waiting to bring this one up.
Are you sure about that?
You're number
Absolutely.
two.
Your ego's bruised.
You're number two. Sorry. I'm sorry.
I
had to
am
break this
number
in.
one.
You are number
But
one.
in all honesty, in all fairness, Tom, I think it's because I'm on screen first. I think that's what it is. It's
Oh,
not
maybe.
that-
Yeah, we walked down the street
You
together.
start
Man, I'm a little
choreography.
further than you.
And then
But
you
that
have
was
the
a
first line
two-shot.
of
It's
the-
a
He was
two-shot.
down.
All right, so I was
Downstage.
I was more important.
It's a two-shot.
I was just trying to make you feel better.
It's a two-shot.
You know, I don't know if we can wrap this up necessarily, but just to kind of a thing from each of you, just kind of looking back on the Creepshow experience and George and, you know, what you've gotten to accomplish here through his work in Pittsburgh, and just anything you want to say to kind of close this out.
Well, for me, I just feel fortunate and lucky. I mean, I've made a lot of friends over the years because of my friendship with George Romero. And I just feel fortunate for all of that, you know.
My career wouldn't exist
No,
if it
nor
wasn't for George Romero.
Yeah.
There would not have been a Friday the 13th if there wasn't a Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead got me Friday the 13th, and that 1-2 punch is what got me every movie after that. As an effects guy, okay?
Yeah.
We were in England, and it was my birthday again, and they gave me a present, and I gave a little speech, and I mainly talked about George, and I looked over, and you were crying.
Yeah.
Just because I couldn't keep it, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, those 2 summers were the favorite summers of my life. Night Riders in 1980 and then Creepshow in 1981. And to me, still, those were 2 of the greatest experiences I had as an actor and Night Riders. But as a filmmaker, I learned everything from George. And by being fortunate enough to have been cast in Dawn of the Dead by John. John was doing the casting for Dawn of the Dead, and by getting me into the family through Dawn of the Dead, I owe a lot to John for that. I was able to really grow as a filmmaker, you know, and I still work in the business and I teach, and all of that was because of George. And I was sitting with George actually at Todd AO when they were mixing the sound for Creepshow, when I got a call from my agent at the sound stage there at Todd AO that I had gotten my first TV series. So I was with George when that happened, and he took me out to dinner that night to a place called Dharma Grebs, and we celebrated. And you know, so he was always just a part of my life as far as my career goes. And you know, and Creepshow was really, I think, pivotal for me as far as just going on and making a career out of it.
He gave me Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Will you direct this for me?
That's right.
Yeah.
Tom, what about you? When you look back, how you feel?
I just love being with George and working with him, and all of the times we did Creepshow and Two Evil Eyes, and then Bruiser, when he finally left Pittsburgh and went up to Canada to do Bruiser up there. So I worked on 3 films with him. One of the little pieces of trivia of my life, and a lot to do with George, and Adrienne and I have worked 4 times together: The Fog, Creepshow, Two Evil Eyes, and Escape from New York. And we have never, ever been on screen together.
No, you haven't. No.
So we've known each other almost all of our film careers, the length of them, and George was a huge part of them. And
Well,
darling man.
shall we end this by a toast or
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
to George?
Toast
To George.
to George.
Here.
Bless him.